It was Kyle who brought up the old asylum on Graysmith Hill that night. Everyone in our town had heard the stories about that place, about the patients that never left, the cruel doctors, and the whispered rumors that something still lingered there, something far worse than just ghosts. That's how we found ourselves walking up the cracked, overgrown path toward Graysmith Asylum with nothing but a few flashlights and the dying light of the moon. There was 5 of us: me, Kyle, Jake, Sarah, and Emma. We were the tightest group in school, always doing stupid things together, always looking for a thrill. But that night felt different from the start. I should have known better. We all should have. But when you're in high school and hanging out with friends, there's a kind of bravery that comes from being in a group. Stupid bravery. Reckless bravery. As we approached the asylum, its silhouette loomed in the distance like a corpse forgotten by time. The building was huge, much larger than any of us had remembered. Its crumbling stone facade and broken windows made it seem as if the earth itself had tried to swallow it up, but failed. Vines snaked up the sides of the building, as if they were slowly strangling the life out of it. The moonlight made the shadows dance across the broken walls, and every step closer felt like stepping into a world we weren't supposed to be in. When we reached the front door, it was half off its hinges, creaking as it swayed gently in the wind. The smell hit us immediately: damp, rotting wood, and something else. Something metallic and foul. "You guys smell that?" Emma whispered, her voice barely cutting through the sound of the wind. "Yeah, probably just dead animals or something," Kyle said, shrugging it off. But I could see the unease in his eyes. We all felt it. The air seemed heavier here, thicker, like it was pressing down on us. But none of us wanted to be the first to back out. Not after coming all this way. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The sound echoed through the hallways, like the whole building was waking up. Our flashlights flickered as we stepped inside, the light bouncing off the cracked tiles and peeling walls. Every step we took seemed to stir something in the air, like a warning we were too stupid to heed. The inside was worse than I imagined. The walls were covered in faded graffiti, but beneath that, you could still see the remnants of what the place had been: rooms with rusted metal bed frames, old wheelchairs with cobwebs draped over them like funeral shrouds. There were papers scattered across the floor, old patient records maybe, but no one wanted to look too closely. "Let's just check out the main hall and leave," Jake said, his voice unusually tight. He wasn't the type to get scared easily, but I could tell this place was getting to him. We walked deeper into the asylum, our footsteps echoing like whispers through the empty corridors. Every now and then, we'd hear a creak or a distant thump, and every time we'd freeze, waiting for something. But there was nothing. Just silence, thick and suffocating. We made it to the main hall, where the patients used to gather for meals and activities. It was a large, cavernous room, with a high ceiling and broken windows lining the far wall. Moonlight spilled in through the cracks, casting eerie shadows on the floor. But the thing that caught our attention wasn't the room itself, it was the wheelchair in the center of it. It looked almost pristine compared to the other rusted relics scattered throughout the asylum. The leather seat was cracked but intact, and the wheels were clean. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that it was facing us, like it had been waiting for us. "That wasn't here before," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't like this," Emma said, taking a step back. "We should go." "I agree," I added quickly. There was something horribly wrong about that chair. It was too deliberate, like a trap waiting to spring. But Kyle, being Kyle, wasn't ready to leave. "It's just a chair," he said, walking toward it. "Probably some other kids messing with us." "Kyle, don't," Jake warned, but Kyle didn't listen. He grabbed the back of the chair and gave it a hard push. It rolled a few feet, squeaking as it moved, but then it stopped. We all stood there, holding our breath, waiting. And then we heard it. A soft, wet shuffling sound, like something dragging itself across the floor. It came from the hallway behind us, the one we had just walked through. I spun around, shining my flashlight into the darkness. Nothing. But the sound didn't stop. It was getting closer. "Guys, we need to go now," I said, backing away from the sound. But then the shuffling stopped, and in the silence, we heard something worse. A whisper. Low and raspy, like someone struggling to breathe, but unmistakable. "Help me." It came from the hallway. The same hallway we had just walked through. The same hallway that had been empty. "Who's there?" Jake called out, his voice shaking. No answer. Just silence, thick and oppressive. Then the wheelchair moved again, this time on its own. It jerked forward a few inches, and we all jumped back. "Enough, we're leaving," I shouted, grabbing Emma's arm and pulling her toward the door. But before we could move, the whisper came again, louder this time, and angrier. "Help me." The air around us seemed to drop 10 degrees, and suddenly the lights of our flashlights flickered and went out, plunging us into complete darkness. Panic set in. I heard someone, Sarah I think, scream, and we all fumbled for our phones, trying to turn on the flashlights. But nothing worked. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, swallowing every bit of light we tried to create. Then, in the pitch black, I felt something brush against my arm. Cold. Wet. Like a hand, but wrong. I yanked my arm away, stumbling backward. "Something's in here with us," Jake shouted, his voice cracking with fear. We ran. I don't even know which direction we went. The hallways all looked the same in the dark, and every corner felt like it led deeper into the labyrinth of the asylum. The whispers followed us, growing louder, more insistent. And then there were footsteps. Heavy, dragging footsteps, like someone was limping after us. I could feel it behind me, that cold, wet presence, reaching for us. I could hear its ragged breathing, its rasping voice calling out. "Help me." We burst through a door, stumbling into what must have been one of the old patient rooms. It was small and cramped, with a single bed in the corner, its sheets stained and torn. We slammed the door behind us, breathing heavily, our hearts racing. "What the hell was that?" Sarah gasped, clutching her chest. "I don't know," I said, trying to catch my breath. "But it's not human, it's not." Before I could finish, the door creaked. Slowly, deliberately. We all turned toward it, frozen in fear. The handle twisted, and the door opened just a crack. In the sliver of light from the hallway, we saw it. A face, pale, with hollow eyes and a mouth twisted into a grotesque grin. Its skin was stretched tight over its skull, and its eyes, they were wrong. Empty. Soulless. "Help me," it whispered, and then the door swung open. That's when the lights came back on. Not our flashlights, but the lights in the hallway. Flickering, buzzing fluorescent lights. And standing there in the doorway was nothing. The hall was empty. We didn't wait to see what would happen next. We ran. We ran out of that room, down the stairs, through the front door, and we didn't stop until we were miles away from Graysmith Hill. We never spoke about what happened that night. Not really. Every once in a while, Kyle would bring it up as a joke, but there was something in his eyes that told me he was laughing. None of us were. But the worst part, the part that still haunts me? Sometimes late at night, when I'm lying in bed, I hear it. That same voice. Help me!